Hello everyone. This video is in respect with Eddie and Scrupulous. And Scrupulous, this goes directly for you talking about quality. You answered one of my videos, and I want to give this to you, both you and Eddie, in honor of both of you and others who are going to be listening to this and others who are on my side. Marked for failure. The truth about accredited certificates, Boeing, Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, and Lockheed, and the collapse of quality oversight. A plain language investigation by quality expert DARYL GUBERMAN revealing how global certification groups like ANSI, ANAB, IF, and ILAC failed to protect the public and how their seal of approval may not mean what you think it does. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is DARYL GUBERMAN. I've worked for years in the world of quality control and certification. That means I've studied how companies get certificates that say their products, services, and systems meet the highest standards. But here's what I've learned. Just because a company has a certificate on the wall doesn't mean things are actually safe. In fact, many companies with serious failures were fully accredited by the biggest names in quality, and I am going to show you how that has happened. Number one. What is accreditation? Why you should care? Let's start out with something simple. When a company wants to prove that its quality system is trustworthy, it hires a certification body, basically a company that checks them and issues a certificate. But who checks the checkers? That's where accreditation bodies come in. Accreditation bodies are supposed to make sure certification bodies or companies are honest, that means certification or registration companies, are honest, trained, and doing things the right way. In the U.S., the two main accreditation bodies are ANSI, the American National Standards Institute, and the American National Crediting Board, ANAB. They work together. In fact, in 2018, ANSI took complete legal control over ANAB, so it really is one organization with two names. But they don't just work inside the United States. ANSI and ANAB helped create two global groups. The IF, International Accreditation Forum, incorporated in Delaware, a sister organization, the International Laboratory Accreditation Cooperation in Australia. These are association of accreditation bodies from all over the world. Think of them like a club where the members approve each other. They are the national and international equivalents of ANSI ANAB, and here's the big problem. ANSI and ANAB are also underwriters for these groups, which means they take legal responsibility, full legal responsibility, when something goes wrong, like a product failure, system failure, or even a public health disaster. This brings us to the real example, the Wuhan Institute of Virology, the same lab at the center of COVID, at the center of the device, the center of the virus, and the origin investigations. The WIV was certified and accredited through the same simple global system, the one that ANSI and ANAB helped create and still support. If their seal of approval really meant safety and competence, then how did the virus escape? I'll tell you how. Because 6 months prior to the certificate being issued to the WIV and 6 months after, the scientists were still complaining about not having highly trained technicians for a bio-level 4 lab, the highest contagion that they could work on. They issued the certificate even though there were weaknesses in the process. And afterwards, once the certificate was given, 6 months afterwards, a contingency of the United States came in, and the scientists were still crying about not having highly trained technicians. You also had Miss Pamela Sale down in Texas give a deposition, stating, and she was the vice president of ANSI ANAB laboratory accreditation, she said from one laboratory to another there are variances and they lack protocols. The confusing and dangerous message from their own websites. Let's talk about what they tell the public. On the ANSI ANAB official website, they used to have a section, this is now web archived, and is your certificate accredited? It answered, if your certificate was issued by an ANSI ANAB accredited body, the answer to it is probably yes. Probably. That's not very reassuring when you say so, especially you guys and gals in aerospace. While Boeing was shoving that AS9100 certificate down your throat, ANSI ANAB accredited per their supplier bulletin on July 2002. And they themselves, Boeing themselves, did not. They were working with internal documents rather than working with international standard documents, AS9100. They said, and that's not reassuring, probably is not, Then they said an accredited certificate should include both a registration mark and accreditation mark. Be sure to look for both those marks. Sounds clear, right? Well, in 2014, 15, I got a letter from the vice president of ANSI ANAB, the chairman of the IF, and he was a principal on the IF tax report, who also served as leader of the IF. And what did he say? He wrote that for a certificate to be official, all it needs is the accreditation mark. And I have the email. I'm not making that up. Nothing else. That completely contradicts what was on their website. So how can we trust this system when even its leaders disagree on what makes a certificate official? The vice president, no less. Worse yet, ANSI ANAB and their global partners say an accredited registrar may offer unaccredited certificates or certificates for standards they are not accredited for to issue. Let's break that down. That means a company that's approved to certify one thing can still issue certificates for something they know nothing about. And that certificate may not be accredited, but they're still handed out. Imagine this. If you got a driver's license from someone who isn't even allowed to give driving tests, would you feel safe on the road? Part 3, real-world examples where accreditation failed. Let's look at 4 huge companies that had serious problems even though they were ISO certified, had accredited certificates from ANSI ANAB or their international equivalents that sit on the IAF or ILAC. Boeing. Boeing had 2 deadly crashes with the 737 MAX airplanes where 346 people died between 2018-19. Their quality systems were not certified by ANSI ANAB, but their suppliers were. In 2024, and I was there for that one, a whistleblower said Boeing 787 fuselages were misaligned, preloaded, and could crack in mid-flight, and yet they were still certified. Those sections were coming from companies that were AS9100 certified, either through ANSI ANAB or international equivalent. Lockheed Martin, the company builds fighters like the F-35. In 2022, it was exposed that the F-35 had thousands of quality defects. Lockheed and its suppliers were ISO certified and accredited by ANSI ANAB. And by the way, all 4 of those companies that I'm mentioning here sit on ANSI ANAB as members. And continue on. Pfizer, the vaccine, went out under emergency use authorization. The clinical trial work was subcontracted to Ventavia. A whistleblower in 2023 said that Ventavia falsified data and ignored quality rules, yet they were still under that accreditation policy, ANSI ANAB or internationally equivalent. Number 4, Johnson & Johnson. In 2018, they paid billions in lawsuits because their baby powder had asbestos. This happened over years, and they were certified by ANSI ANAB or internationally equivalent the entire time. So the big question is, what good is a certificate if these disasters still happen under its watch? The final question, can we trust the seal? Let's go back to the ISO and ANSI, what they say. Accreditation provides independent confirmation of competence. That was on the ISO website. Is it competent when a virus escapes a lab like the WIV? Is it competence when plane crashes, jets break, vaccines are mismanaged, and baby powder harms children? Or these certificates that just fancy logos on a piece of paper backed by organizations that don't take real responsibility until it's too late, and then they don't. Closing, you decide. We've all been told that certification and accreditation means safety, quality, and trust. But I've shown you that many companies, ANSI, ANAB, IAF certified, and or their international equivalents, have failed in dangerous and costly ways. And I leave you with this question. Do these global accreditation systems, ANSI, ANAB, IF, and ILAC, and their international equivalents on the IF and ILAC, really provide independent confirmation of confidence or competence? Or are we the people being marked for failure? 203-556-1493. And just remember, for those who are AS9100, who were forced that way by Boeing and Lockheed, think about your confidence and competence. Think about that one. 203-556-1493. Eddie and Scrupulous, I thank you for this information as far as getting it out to you. Thank you.